So what I'm going to talk about today is how you do research on the Nebraska Wesleyan Library so that those of you who won't be here can start working on your source cards for your government assignment. So the first thing I need you to do is open up your computer and Google, everybody get your computers open, and just Google Nebraska Wesleyan. Okay? Everybody got there? So from this Google page, you can just click on right here, inside NWU. Does everybody see that? If not, you can, if you're already on the Nebraska Wesleyan website, you can get to inside NWU from right here. Okay, so you're all going, well, those of you who are going to college next year are going to become intimate with the details of running your college's computer programs, whatever they are. So some schools use Blackboard, although I think a lot of schools are switching to Canvas, which is, so these are kind of like Schoology type programs. It's called a learning management system. There are hundreds of them available. Who's taken a class through CCC this year? What software do they use?
Moodle.
Moodle. Okay, same basic premise, right? It's kind of like Schoology. You have a course. Inside your course, there's a bunch of other stuff. There's discussion boards, assignment links, assignment submissions, all kinds of stuff. Another thing that your username and password provide you with is access to the school's library. So from this Inside NWU page, scroll down a little bit, and under Academic Resources, I want you to click on Cochran Woods Library. In a perfect world, we would go to Lincoln for a day to the Nebraska Wesleyan Library and sit there and do research. But you have all looked at the calendar today and know that finding a day where that could happen is
Today?
Next to impossible. And so you're just gonna get my spiel on the library. Okay, how many of you get a magazine subscription at your home?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
How about a newspaper?
Yeah.
Okay, chances are in your life those two things and novels are the only type of published books that you've ever probably held in your hand. Okay, pretty common. But there's a whole world of publications that you did not know existed. Okay, these are specific journals, they're called. It's basically like a magazine, but they don't have advertisements in them. Journals related to specific fields of study. So, for instance, there is a journal all about Mark Twain. And so 4 times a year they publish this journal, and it has just people doing research about his life, about his work, the impact that his work has on the modern world, how it's taught, how you could teach it, why you should teach it, why you shouldn't teach it. Okay, does anybody care about that?
No.
A small fraction of the universe cares about that, right? Okay, so if you were to click right here on journals on that blue button, yours is going to force you to log in, right? No? No? Okay, good. Okay, this is a search for all kinds of different journals. What I want you to do, go back to the Cochran Woods Library link. I don't know if it opened a new tab or not. And click on databases. What's a database?
Where all the data is stored.
Okay, it's a base where data is stored. Okay, colleges subscribe to databases which provide you with access to millions of documents. So, Nebraska Wesleyan subscribes to 77 databases. I think UNK's is like 249. So and these databases, some of them have like crossover, carry the same thing. Here's one called Agricola. It's a database of materials acquired by the National Agriculture Library and other institutions, all related to agriculture. If we scroll down a little bit, there's one right here about Biography Reference Bank. Contains more than 111,000 biographies. That would have been helpful probably when you're doing your leader, Fall from Power paper. Here's one about biological sciences. Here's one about business case studies. So, specific, in-depth analysis of different businesses. You can imagine the list goes on and on from very specific to a little bit broader. We're going to start with the broader one. So I want you to click on the second database on the list, Academic Search Premier. And it's probably going to ask you for a login, hopefully. And right up there on the board in black ink is the login information. So you use guest 1 and the password is ANI7like. And then you can save that. Maybe take a picture of it or write it down somewhere in case you... Well, I'll put it on Schoology, okay? I'll put that in the must-haves folder on Schoology, okay? Okay. Most of the information that you're going to find inside this database is stuff that you cannot find just by searching the internet. Because all of these documents you have to pay for to access. So unless you want to pay for a subscription to the individual websites, which I'm guessing you don't, you can't just get this information for free. Because you're a paid student from Nebraska Wesleyan, you have access to their library materials. So that's why we're going to do research here instead of just on the internet. In some cases, there's going to be maybe more hits, in some cases less. But in all cases, the information from the databases is more credible than what you just find searching Google. Alright, so we're going to search, I think both classes today in this classroom talked about term limits, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to type term limits in right here. You notice that there are 3 search bars. And where it has and here, you can also change it to or and not. So I'm just going to search term limits. Anybody want to guess how many hits I'm going to have?
Over 1,000.
Over 1,000?
21,000. Or 21. Oh, man. No.
5,928. Now, I'm just looking here. This one says international in big bold letters. Sustainability, all these names seem to be, oh, here we go, European Journal of Political Economy. Is this a potentially useful
Probably not.
title? Maybe. You may need to use European, because has the United States ever not had term limits?
No.
Or had term limits?
No.
Whatever you're arguing for?
No.
No, whatever it is, it's always been, right? So maybe you need to look in another place to see how it works for them. Could you base your potential changes on another country's government? Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to click on it. This is the most perfect example I could have asked for. Thank you, universe. Okay, sometimes when you click on an article, there's no full text. Remember Ms. Block said you can't just use the abstract? Abstract is a summary. So you may be reading over this abstract and think to yourself, this sounds like exactly what I need. And then you go, use a word I can't say out loud, there's no full text. Sometimes when you click this button right here that says check for full text, it's going to allow you to search in a different database that may have access to it. In this case, it does not. But you can request this item through interlibrary loan. Okay, here's what you're going to do if that happens to you. you're going to send an email to me because you can't enter library loan because you're using a guest password. I can because I have an actual legitimate password. So if you want something through interlibrary loan, you email me and I'll submit it. What that means is some other library in the country has access to this, but Nebraska Wesleyan does not. So Nebraska Wesleyan is going to send out a request to some other library and they're going to email you the article back. That make sense? It's a little difficult, complicated, but really useful thing.
That's so ridiculous.
I didn't know
When-
things like this existed.
When you're needing interlibrary loan, I want to tell you a couple good stories, horror stories. One time, well, sometimes when I do an ILL request, I'll get it like the next day. Maybe even that same day. Sometimes it'll take 12 days. Can you wait 12 days? What I would suggest you do in that case, say you email me and say I need this article, go ahead and put a note on your source card that says waiting for ILL. But you're going to need to have another source card also. But then maybe in a couple weeks you get it, and it ends up being the best article you had. Maybe you couldn't include it on your research cover page, but you are able to use it when it comes to the actual writing the report. Make sense? These will almost always be digital downloads. Only like maybe 2 times ever have I actually been mailed a physical book. But usually people just need an article that they have to either scan or email to the other library, and it happens pretty quickly. Okay, going back here to the library now. Really helpful button I'm sure you're all going to love is this one right here that says Cite. You click on it, voila, there's an APA reference already written for you. Which you may copy
Nice.
and paste
Nice.
right onto your source card.
Thank you, copy and paste.
However, I want to tell you that there are lots of times where I find these are not exactly correct. Okay? So you just maybe need to check. Like, sometimes they have other words capitalized in the title instead of just the first one. Over the years, this has gotten better, but you can imagine 6,000. What the boys and I searched this morning, there were 33,000 hits on what we searched.
Mine has more.
Somebody has been typing a lot of APA references, so you can give them a little, cut them a little slack for the fact that there might be a few errors. Okay, how many of you are going to want to print this stuff? So you're going to want to print every one of your sources to actually physically have in your hand to highlight on. And
Possibly.
okay, when you want to print something, you're going to click on the print button over here. Listen, this is going to be an important bit of information. Okay? I would suggest that you include a detailed citation and that you make sure you check APA here so you don't get a Chicago or Tribunal or Brazilian, I don't know. Whatever, don't click the wrong one. Then when you print this, it's going to include the citation in print also, so that when you're typing, you can make sure you use the right information in your in-text citation. Right? Because your in-text citation needs to match exactly what this has at the beginning. So if you were going to cite this article, every time you cite it, you have to use that. And if you have it printed out right beside you, you can type it as you go. Instead of having to go back to your source card.
Isn't there a way to like enter citations into Word?
Yes, there is. I'll come back and show you. Okay, let's find one that actually is available in full text. So if you click right here on this button, it's going to take you back to your results list. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and modify this search to include United States. So that now what it's going to search for is articles containing term limits and United States. and see how much that slims down my result list. Okay? Half, more than half that took away. Then I'm going to click over here and limit to full text only. So now it's going to get rid of all those partial ones. Is that good?
Sure.
Yeah, but also kind of bad because there might be some really good ones that now you're not going to see at all. And then, looking right here on the side, I see this is going all the way back to 1935. Do I really need to be reading research from 1935 on this topic? Probably not. I'm going to go ahead and go to 1990. I mean, that's 30 years ago. And that's going to take me down 2. Okay, so maybe let's go to 2000. See what happens. Because it's not realistic to look at 840 documents. Okay, that got me to 500. Maybe I'm focusing on legislative. Oh, good. Much more reasonable. Okay? Now, these all say full text. You can see this one's from USA Today. That's a newspaper. This one is from the New York Amsterdam News, and another one
What
from...
the heck does that third one have to do with?
Bicycle.
Great question.
Joe Frazier.
Okay, I changed it to term limits, United States and Congress. Okay, this one seems like it might be useful. Should members of Congress have term limits?
Well,
That's your question, probably, right? Okay, if I want to, here's my article right here. This one even has audio, so if you don't want to read it, you can listen to it.
Oh my God.
You can download the audio version even.
Who would do that?
Oh my God.
Okay, when I print it, it's gonna pull up a new window. And this is what the print window looks like. So it's going to print your reference right here exactly as you should have it on your references page. And then here is your article. That's a yes-no opinion article. Has 2 authors, 3, with 2 authors. Okay? Makes sense? Kind of like, sort of? Don't do that.
Can you just search all the databases, or do you have to do one specific database?
So Academic Search Premier searches many databases. It's a big,
Okay.
really general, and it will even search databases that it doesn't have full access to, but then when you click on full text, sometimes it'll take you to a different database through Nebraska Wesleyan. Okay, a couple things I want to tell you about. This is easier in some ways because everything you find is definitely credible and you can use it. It can be difficult because there are still thousands and thousands of things, and while the database does sort them from most relevant to least relevant, there may still be, out of this 634, 500 that are almost equally all relevant. So it can be a little overwhelming. Also, this is searching for keywords from the abstract, so the article may not really be about term limits, United States and Congress. It might be about the United States Congress and say term limits one time. So it's really important that you start in your list there, start with the most important thing, and try a lot of different things. So I tried legislative branch, and that didn't yield me any results. I changed it to Congress, which is pretty much the same thing, and it gave me hundreds of results. So changing one word will oftentimes totally change your search results. How do you know what to search for? Guess. You'll get better over time. There is no magic way that this gets easier